Welcome to Rambling Wednesday slash Woke Wednesday, because somehow it always gets to conspiracy stuff, whether we want it to or not. But
yeah, and soon enough we're going to have one focusing solely on conspiracies, on government corruption, on so many things.
I look so forward to that.
Yeah, I've been trying to round up some guests, but people who are into this kind of stuff, surprisingly enough, unlike myself, a little timid about putting it out there, you know?
Right. Maybe they're worried the government or someone's going to find out and come after them. There have been some really bizarre cases of people working to expose things and then they wind up dead.
Yeah, man. Victor Thorne, a guy, I've read his stuff over the years. He was, seemingly suicided. I think even his family has said that it doesn't look like there's foul play. But anyway, that happens to a lot of people. I
saw one. I don't think it's that same guy, but this was a couple years ago. I saw this, but he was like trying to uncover some kind of government conspiracy, something, and I think he might have went overseas. I think he was an American, but anyways, he had texted his mom and said that, he thought someone was following him and all this random stuff, and then ended up finding him like dead under some very bizarre circumstances. And he was a pretty young guy, and I think they ruled it a suicide, but like his family doesn't believe it because of the messages and the things that he had been telling them. But anyways, I'm Justin.
And I'm JP.
And we are the Podcasting Dead. We podcast about things Walking Dead related, but we also, as you can see, podcast about a bunch of random stuff. And as you can also tell, we get off subject very easy. So we're like, hey, let's contain that to one day a week. We'll have a podcast where there is no real direction and it'll go wherever. So you've been warned. There's no true direction to this podcast. There are subjects. Whatever you see the subject of the title of this video definitely is something we talk about, but the conversation can go anywhere. Don't forget, tomorrow is our mail call podcast where we answer your question. Consider giving us a like on this video. It helps us out a lot. And if you're so inclined, subscribe. After the podcast, we'll talk about our Patreon and social media. But in the meantime, JP, my boy, what have you been up to, and what are you searching for on your phone? Why do you have your phone out when we're podcasting?
Well, I'm doing some research. Now, you bring up people dying, truth tellers dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, like, there's so many good examples. I mean, Seth Rich, he was a Bernie guy. And it's been a while since I really kind of delved into that, but I mean, he was, quote unquote, mugged and killed 2 shots to the back. He was had a lot to do with the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, getting exposed for screwing Bernie over, like clearly having a bias towards Hillary. And next thing you know, he's like I said, quote unquote, robbed, even though nothing was missing from his body, shot twice in the back. And the Truth Factory, I've gotten a lot of info on that.
There's one thing the Clintons can do, it's make you disappear. So
that's the way it seems. Nothing's
They're powerful. They're a power couple, man. I mean, they've it really, and it's not a political thing. I'm not choosing a side here, Democrat or Republican. I'm just saying, like, Hillary specifically. I'm not talking about Obama or any other Democrats. I'm talking about Hillary and Bill. There are some really, really odd things that they're tied to, and like if you really do your research into them and some of the corruption and yada yada, it's some bizarre stuff, man. Like I'd be scared I don't know if I'd be scared, but I would be probably prepared to die if I was to speak out publicly against the Clintons.
I'm telling you, man. I mean, there's a lot in Washington like that. I mean, they're the best example, I guess, but they're certainly not the only ones with blood on their hands. I mean, and, Seth Rich, you got Chris Cornell, mysteriously committed suicide.
And what was the deal with him? Obviously, I mean, I know, lead singer of Soundgarden. What was he? He was looking into something, right?
Yeah, the child sex trafficking. He was, he might have been making a documentary, and then he, mysteriously.
The fact that is or could be a thing, just now as a new parent, I don't try to get on I don't try to get on, what am I trying to say here, a pedestal, because I've only been a parent for 2 months. But just as much as you love your child, and I have a little girl on top of that, just the thought that there could be an organization out there kidnapping people's kids and selling them into like sex slavery it's horrifying.
Oh, yeah, man. It's
the fact that people want to participate in that is horrifying.
There's a lot of people with very sick appetites. I mean, I'm into some weird stuff, man, but I've never, blood's never rushed to my penis looking at a little kid.
No kidding. I think most normal people, it doesn't.
Yeah, like I said, man, I've always thought there's just these uber rich, uber powerful people. They've indulged themselves in every pleasure possible. All that's left is the most, grotesque
taboo
stuff. Yeah,
thing out there.
So it's
Jesus, man. I really, and I'm not doubting you here because, I love conspiracy stuff. I'm not as inclined to believe all of them, but I do love hearing about them. That's one of those things I definitely won't say is or isn't true because I haven't done any research on it, but I hope to God it's just a conspiracy theory. I mean, I know human sex trafficking is a thing, but as far as a child sex trafficking ring, especially involving like high political figures and stuff, man, I hope that's just a theory because
a lot
is there any hope left for the world if the powers to be, if that's what they're in? You know what I mean? Like it's like one of the lowest of lows that humanity can go there, I feel.
It's been going on since time immemorial, man. I mean, it's nothing new. And they say Chester Bennington, lead singer of Linkin Park.
One of my I saw them 5 times.
Yeah, I mean, he was, he was into the same thing. They were both... A lot of people think,
and it was
murder.
A perfect tie-in too. They made him look like he was just extremely depressed about Chris Cornell's suicide and took his own life. But
yeah, it was only like 2 months later.
I hate those theories if they're not true because I believe strongly in mental health awareness, and because there are people that do just up and commit suicide with really no warning and no one saw it coming, and it's not a conspiracy. It's they needed help and they never reached out for help or never got help. So I don't know. I listen to those and I'm down to hear them, and I definitely don't say that that's not possible, but I just, I don't know, man. You hate it because you hate if somebody committed suicide because of a mental illness that instead of bringing awareness, it just starts turning into crazy conspiracy theories. But you're right. I mean, people have been killing people and making it look like suicide for a very long time.
Yeah, well, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Is it the government in your head?
It could be that or, just...
Why don't you tell everybody real quick while we're talking about government, tell them what I own that you are terrified of.
Man, I don't like those drones. I don't like them.
My dad and I both are into drone flying. I've plugged his page, Skypics by Kenny Lloyd, many times, which, by the way, if you're on Facebook, you should go like because he posts some really, really cool stuff. I post a few little short videos. Like mine will be primarily probably like hiking and stuff like that, but I plan to start using it more. But I brought it to the station. I have a small one. I have a DJI Tello, which is just a little bitty drone. It records pretty good video, but it's just not really made to do cinematic footage. It's more or less just to play around with the drone and you can get some video. But that terrified JP. I have a hilarious video of me chasing JP around the studio with that DJI Tello. It is so funny. But I also brought my DJI Spark in one day, and that terrified JP. Like JP didn't want no part of that.
I mean,
why are you terrified?
Y'all are getting some beautiful footage, but man, I don't like everything's starting to border on AI, man, and it's only a matter of time before somebody else or the drones, man, they're doing things you don't want them to do. They're taking pictures of you on the toilet and all this kind of stuff.
Well, considering I keep it locked up in a case, I don't think that's going to be possible.
Yeah, until you think it's not, and then it's happening every time.
That sounds like that South Park episode. Did you ever see the South Park drone episode?
No.
Oh, it was so funny. You got to go watch it, man. It's older, but it's where they get it basically like what you're talking about. They get Butters. You know Butters, right? Mm-hmm. Butters' dad gets a drone. So Cartman tells Butters, we need to fly it. And Butters is like, no, I'd be in a lot of trouble. And Cartman's like, no one would know. So they take it and they fly it. And they accidentally, they don't accidentally. They're spying on this guy's wife changing. So she sees the drone. The husband sees the drone. So they fly the drone back. And they make it look like they never messed with it and whatever. So the dad refuses to accept that Butters flew his drone. So he starts to think the drone is flying on its own. And it's like, when I went out there, the battery was only half charged or something like that. And it's like clearly the strength. Somebody's like, you think maybe your son? No, my son would never do that. He knows he's not allowed to. The drone, it's doing things on its own. And then it just becomes this whole big thing.
Man, I mean... There's some stuff I ain't really, I'm still researching, but I know is sort of on the brink, and I ain't really want to bring it up in a public forum straight up for fear of, repercussions and what have you. And I still don't know that I want to
Well, you can't.
on this podcast.
You got to tell us now. You can't do that. That's like saying, "Hey, I got a secret, but I'm not going to tell you." Like you don't do that to somebody. So now you got to tell us.
Basically, the next step in the drone stuff, man, is basically like, I won't say an implant. Basically, think more than likely it would be like a headband, or maybe even worked into to like glasses that basically correspond with your neural synapses. You know, I don't know medical terminology, but basically you'll have a means of mentally manipulating the drone. But what a lot of people don't understand is it's a revolving door. It'll be up to people like me to figure out, you know, are you manipulating the drone, or is the drone beginning to manipulate you?
Well, they already have VR with drones, headphones you put on to where when you're in the air, you can look around as if you were the camera of the drone.
Yeah, and see, soon enough, it's going to be actually corresponding with your neural syntaxes. I know I keep saying the wrong word. I'm not good with medical terminology. I'm just saying that there's going to be an open channel between your mind and your drone, and this is going to be for a lot of different devices. I mean, right now you've got I have a friend with a cerebral palsy. He, you know, talks and communicates with his iPad by blinking, you know, and it's stuff like that, man, is where it's really going to kind of go to another level. We're talking about singularities. We're talking about computers starting to, like I said, the puppet master becoming the puppet, so to speak. And that's what I'm getting nervous about in a lot of
But my
big
drone
ways.
doesn't do that. My drone does have facial recognition, but it's only so that no one can just, you know, go fly it. But my drone,
yeah,
I can fly it without a controller, just using hand gestures and stuff. But I mean, there's no question on who controls who on that.
But like I said,
it's also like it's a few pounds, and it's not weaponized. So if it ever turns against me, I'm pretty sure I could destroy it with a broom.
But this is the next step: a mental interface, a neural interface, and it's not just going to be drones. It's going to be a lot of stuff. We're talking.
So is that a theory, or do you have confirmation that they're working on that? Because that's a pretty easy thing to just make up and throw on the internet and then watch it spread like wildfire the way it is with you.
This is something I'm doing a lot of work on right now, and I'm not. Like I said, I wasn't even planning on really.
Who's developing this technology? Since you're doing a lot of work on it, who is developing it? There are several different drone developers out there. You've got Rise, you've got DJI. Who's working on this tech? You've said you've done a lot of work. So who is developing this technology?
A lot of these companies behind the scenes are subsidized by bigger companies, parent companies that are subsidized, of course, by the government. And when I say the government, that's a big term. I hate just saying the government. That's like, you know, saying God. You see what I'm saying? You know, and we haven't really got into breakaway governments in here, but there's a lot of factions within the government that
I believe
operate independently. You know what I mean? A lot of people would say NASA was a breakaway government, basically founded by, it was. I mean, for Werner von Braun, Nazis came to America, you know, Operation Paperclip and what have you, and basically NASA became, in a sense, a breakaway government operating independently.
But so back to the subject at hand.
Okay,
you don't know. I mean, I agree with you. There are definitely entities in the government that act independently, that do things without any knowledge or approval from central government per se. But you don't know, like, who's developing this technology. Where did you read this? Where did you find this? You said you've done a lot of work on it. So where are you reading? Where did you get this from?
I've got a lot of sources. I'm not going to name names on here. And look, some of them could be hacks. You know what I mean?
You can give me a little bit more of a broad. Are you finding it on YouTube? Are you finding it on podcasts? Are you reading articles? Where is it coming from?
I've been reading. I've been watching. You know, I've got a buddy who's kind of helping me delve into a 3chan and 4chan and a lot of different sources. And like I said, that's where the work comes in, is weeding through what's garbage, what's misinformation, what's deliberately put there by the powers that be to mislead us. That's where the work comes in, is figuring out. And that's why I wasn't really prepared to delve into this right here.
Well, let
me
ask you a question then. This you should still be able to answer. So make sure I understand what you're saying is happening here. And I'm not mocking it. I'm making sure I understand what you're saying.
Of course.
You're saying that what is happening is that they are developing something that messes with your neural synapses and stuff, and that basically it'll link to your brain, and under the guise of, hey, you can control your drone with your brain. But really, someone in the government is getting them to do this so that they can in turn like reverse it and control you.
Right. I mean,
What about when the drone's battery dies?
It's kind of a stupid comparison, but remember Batman Forever?
Oh, yeah.
Enigma's like brain drain, where you think the TV's going straight into your mind, and that's great, but it's not just going in, it's able to take stuff out. It's kind of a similar concept to that. It's kind
so
of
they could like get your memories and stuff, you're saying? So it's not so much control, just them being able to get in your head?
Well, it's just open access to your mind. It's kind of like it's very similar to our smartphones, like you're looking on Amazon for Batman action figures. Next thing you know, you're seeing ads pop up for Batman action figures when you're on Facebook.
Right.
It's a very similar thing. I mean, these are all testing grounds for this kind of technology, and eventually it will be interfaced with our actual minds, whether you're interfacing with your phone, with a drone. And like I said, it's very much a two-way door. Oh man, I'm telling you, man. I think there's evil entity. I believe there's already a singularity's occurred as far as like an overreaching AI that really, sees humanity as something to be overcome and controlled. And maybe they're right. I mean, we could very well destroy the planet.
Hell, humans have thought that for a long time too.
I mean, I've always, joked around about Stephen Hawking's is just a vessel, for AI, because he communicates through computers. I think the computer's communicating to us through him,
right?
Not him communicating to us through computer. And like I said, now that is just me, just being silly. But I've always wondered that,
Going back on ad placement, I'll tell you something weird. When I got my friend James over to the house and was telling him that we were having a baby, because I try to tell each friend individually, but was telling him about it. And what's funny is, he's like, congratulations, all that stuff. And then we were talking about like me being a dad. And I said, yeah, I'll tell you what, man, I definitely want to get one of those like front carriers, because like we somehow got to talking about hiking. I said, yeah, I'll definitely be taking her hiking. Yeah. And what's weird is James was like, we know they make those military-looking ones that have like Molly and stuff on them, but it's a vest that you put your child in, like a front carrier, or you can put them on your back. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be really cool. I kid you not. I'm not. If you listen to this podcast, I'm not the easiest to sway in favor of certain conspiracies. But, dude, the phone was freaking listening to him, because he was on Facebook. And you know how Facebook, you scroll past a few posts and you'll see some ads. It was an ad for a like military tactical baby carrier. Yeah. And James is like, dude, what the hell? He was like, and by the way, we cuss on this podcast. So if you got kids, just be ready. They might be repeating some bad words. And excuse my language here, but he was like, dude, what the fuck? Yeah. And he goes, I've not been looking, like we were just talking about this. He's like, I was not looking these up. He was like, the only reason I knew about the military thing one is because I saw somebody with one. And I said, man, that looks like a tactical vest. And the guy's like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. So like the phone listened to what we said and ran that through some algorithm and put an ad for what we talked about on his Facebook. Either that, and don't get me wrong, I do believe in coincidence. I think some things that people are like, there's no way that's coincidence. It's like, well, that's why it's called coincidence. There are things that are like 1,000,000,001 chance that do happen.
And you said that popped up on his?
But I don't feel like it's a coincidence. Popped up on his phone, not mine.
Not yours. Because I was going to say, I'm sure you've looked at some baby stuff, but it popped up on his.
It popped up on his.
He doesn't have any kids. And okay.
Yeah, he went on Facebook, after we were talking, and he's just like, dude. I mean, like, that could be coincidence, but I highly doubt it.
Well, it's just like, man, you're hanging out at the bar and, hanging out with new people. Chances are the next day you're going to see them pop up on a friend request. And not friend request,
but like suggested friends.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that where, like, I've interviewed somebody on the radio station, which one explanation, I don't know if this is true or not, but I had heard whenever somebody looks at your profile that they will pop up. Like, if I was we weren't friends on Facebook and I was to, like, check out your profile. Right. Then you would see me under your suggested friends. So now that could be you go to the bar, you meet people, then they're like, oh, that JP is a cool guy, and they're looking at your profile, but they don't friend request you. Maybe they're one of those people, they're like, I don't send friend requests. And then you see, but I mean, you're right. I have done that. I have met people, and then like a day or two later, they're under suggested friends, and I'm like, okay, Facebook, how did you know that I just met them?
Yeah, man, I don't know.
I mean, it's been proven they can listen in on your phone.
Yeah. I mean, your phone's never really off. Like, even if you turn it off, it's still accessible.
They still can track it when it's off, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard that they can track it with the battery out. Don't know how true that is. I mean, when I worked for a cell phone company, and we could track phones. Like if not, we had 911 calls. We would work with police and use signals to triangulate the location of the person at large to track them. Like they really only. I will say, yes, obviously, it's like, oh, the government will use it. But I will say now that was done in a situation where a child was kidnapped and they were trying to find the child, or someone who they thought was in immediate danger. It was never like, oh, this guy's wanted for not coming to court because he had some weed on him and now we've got to, subpoena, we got to arrest him or whatever. Let's triangulate his location. It was always for extreme cases, instances where I think most decent human beings would be like, okay, fine, find that child. The child's in danger. But it is possible. And that was like back in 2007, 2008. I mean, imagine what they can do now.
I'm telling you, man, of all the apocalyptic scenarios, I mean, you've got zombie apocalypse, you've got alien invasion apocalypse, you got, the old school Jesus apocalypse, biblical apocalypse. Of all of them, man, AI, like Terminator style apocalypse scares me the most.
Yeah, I think I could agree because, number one, you can't punch a robot.
Nah, man, I'd rather take on a horde of zombies than a
Well, the thing about aliens,
robot.
though, I think it was Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking I know he was very against trying to reach out and communicate with AI.
I remember that, yeah.
Because, obviously we don't know how they are compared to like humanity.
Aliens?
I said AI, didn't I? With aliens, sorry, I'm tired. He was very against reaching out to aliens, extraterrestrials, because he said when you look at human history, what always happens when a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization? The more advanced civilization conquers, destroys, and takes it for their own. Yeah. It happened like you were talking about with the Aztecs. It's happened all throughout human history. It's just almost human nature. So if an alien species are able to reach us before we can reach them, obviously they are more advanced than we are, and that it's not a good idea to invoke them or let them know we're here, come find us, because they might not be like us, but if they're anything like us, at some point they'll probably realize, hey, here's a new habitable planet with billions of people we can put into servitude. We can easily take it over. Let's take it. Why not? So, alien and extraterrestrial invasion scares the shit out of me because it's just like, man, if they can, AI as well, but aliens, if they can make it here, then they're probably way more advanced than we are already, and we don't really stand much of a chance.
Yeah, that's kind of like Zachariah Sitchin, the guy who back in the 70s, I guess, transcribed all the ancient Sumerian texts, like interpreted them. And he believed after reading his text, and almost every mainstream scholar discredits him, but he says that, the Anunnaki came here from a planet, at the very end of our solar system to basically use, to
mine gold and stuff, right?
Yeah, they genetically engineered early hominids into modern humans to make a slave race.
I think I was watching that on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, they go into that hard. I read his first book. I didn't get any further than that. But.
It might not be as out there as you think. I mean, look at the genetic, as under advanced as we are compared to like an extraterrestrial race that could reach us. I mean, we can look at the gene splicing and the things that we can do already ourselves. Imagine how much more advanced that would be as far as taking a species and like kickstarting evolution. And I mean, they said, it is bizarre how most humans are very attracted to shiny things. Like we can't help it. Like, I don't know about you, but though, what do they call them? Like comic book covers that have those
like the foil covers,
right? Yeah, and then you see toys and things, or like little fake fish with those colorful scales. I gravitate to it. Like I can't stop staring at it. It's fascinating, and they say that they evolved us very rapidly to seek out and, like you said, mine gold and silver. And there was a revolution or something at one point. We broke away and we're like.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Fought them off, or maybe they left because they'd taken a large deposit of gold and silver, and we're like, we got what we need now.
Yeah, I think like the story goes, they needed gold to repair their atmosphere or something. I don't know. It gets pretty wacky, but it's wild, man. There's definitely a lot of holes in the evolutionary story. For one thing, we took a giant leap forward just all of a sudden out of nowhere. Not to mention,
that's in reference to the missing link, right? Like we still don't have that missing link between. Like early, what we consider to be like the precursor to man and modern man, right? Like we're still missing that missing link.
Yeah.
Then they think they had found it, but then it turned out to be a fraud. It was like a bunch of random bones put together or something.
It's crazy, man. You know what we mentioned yesterday? I was talking about how, it's commonly known. I mean, we grew up learning this, that humans evolved out of Africa, but now people are finding fossils that are suggesting Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa. So
that is interesting, yeah, because we've been taught for the longest time that that life came from Africa, like the Garden of Eden would be, from Africa. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Like this, just kind of briefly, it says most experts believe that our human lineage split from apes around 7 million years ago in Central Africa, where hominids remained for the next 5 million years before venturing further afield. But 2 fossils of an ape-like creature, which had human-like teeth, have been found in Bulgaria and Greece, dating to 7.2 million years ago.
So they think that early humans lived amongst dinosaurs?
How far back do the dinosaurs go?
Hundreds, probably. What was it? Yeah, probably further back than that. You're probably.
I mean,
right.
I have heard people theorize that people like humanity does go back that far. That maybe there was just like some bleed over where, maybe some.
Oh
dinosaurs.
yeah, 66 million years.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But no, man. Like I have heard some people have suggested that certain dinosaurs, possibly survived the cataclysm that took it out. So it was possible that some hominids might have been around, some last surviving dinosaurs. I mean, some things did survive, like garfish in the river here. They go back to prehistoric
Alligators
times.
and sharks are prehistoric.
Yeah, at least their ancestors. I mean, they've definitely changed over the years, but it's wild, man. Like, I mean, they say they can test our DNA and see how much like Neanderthal DNA is in there because our ancestors, Homo sapien or whatever, Homo erectus or whatever it was, were, bone in Neanderthals.
What is it, trilobites or whatever, they're ancient. They've survived. Cockroaches, right? They're ancient. Yeah. So some stuff did survive.
Yeah, some stuff for sure.
I don't know if they're called trilobites or not, but they're those little like crustaceans you see like at aquariums. You can pick up and flip them over, and they've got all those arms, like legs under them. And like some people call them horseshoe crabs, maybe? I can't remember.
Sounds right.
But anyways, there are some things that they say survived from the dinosaur age, and they're still flourishing today. So, yeah, there definitely are things that survived. But, I mean, like they say, if dinosaurs would have survived on a large scale, that humanity would have never been able to make it, right? I mean, we would have been eaten. We would have been just pretty much wiped out, or definitely wouldn't have been at the top of the food chain.
I'm telling you, man, I really want to do a podcast when we do the woke thing about the whole dinosaur fraud conspiracy. How people think that it's...
I had a
really
cousin one
man.
time, and she used to tell me that that she didn't think dinosaurs were really real, that it was all just... Because you told me, I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that when you were looking at fossils in a museum or whatever, that I knew that not all of those fossils were authentic. Like, they basically would find, like, a backbone and maybe a skull, and they had to reconstruct the ribs and the arms and all of that. But you were telling me that, like, almost all of it's fake, right? Like some of them are just straight up made based on what they think the fossils would look like and made to look old.
Absolutely, man. Like I got into it with my buddy Josiah one time. He sent me an article about like a relatively recent dinosaur find in China. And I sent him back an article. I'm pretty sure it was China. Like the biggest manufacturer of these fossils that go out to museums is based in the country where he,
Right.
And I was just like, man, I mean, and you look back at the timeline, so many of these, quote unquote scientists who were discovering these fossils were just flim-flam guys, just piecing together like whale bones and elephant bones and just making these crazy creatures. And I think I read somewhere that like it's debated whether an actual like T-Rex skull has ever actually been found intact. And again, this is something I hadn't really looked into for a while. We just got to talking about dinosaurs, and it does make you wonder, man. It really does, especially since no dinosaur fossils were really found up until like this point, I think in the 1800s maybe. But it was just so easy to I mean, look at Joseph Smith with Mormonism, if you were a smooth talker and had a little bit of something to show somebody, man, you could freaking get people to believe whatever bullshit you were peddling.
What did he say? He found a book or something?
He found gold tablets that, and granted, a lot of this I'm getting from an episode of South Park, but I have researched Mormonism a little bit. But yeah, it was just golden tablets that he got from God, and he interpreted them by putting them in a hat or something. is fucking crazy, man. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Mormons are some very sweet people. I've been to Mormon church. I've got a Mormon great aunt. Not disparaging the people. I just think the belief system is pretty crazy. But every belief system's crazy, so.
Yeah, you can make any belief sound wild.
The only thing is, with most like Christianity or Judaism, it's so far back, it's so ancient, it's hard to just, completely disparage it. But I mean, with Mormonism, like Joseph Smith, we've got documents. Like people used to pay him to go on treasure hunts, and it was just all bullshit. He would just take them on these fake treasure hunts and take their money, and he'd get it. He was arrested for fraud like multiple times.
And how long ago was this that all this happened? I know next to nothing about Mormonism, so enlighten me. What time frame was it that he supposedly found these tablets?
It was in the 1800s. I'm trying to remember if it was pre or post Civil War, but it was like probably after the Civil War. So, yeah, and it just, it grew and grew, and next thing you know, dudes have like 5 wives, and which maybe that's not such a bad idea. I don't know. But.
I mean, I feel like you should have his, excuse me, as long as they're all consenting and it's not a Manson family type thing. I think that, you should, if 5 women want to share one man, I mean, I believe in freedom, brother. So, I mean, I get it why most people don't want to share their lover. I get, but I think that if that's what people are into, man, I believe in freedom, whatever. Let them do what they want. They want to be
1830.
1830, so it's pre-Civil War.
Civil War, yeah.
Very interesting. I would love to do a podcast on the dinosaur fraud because as a kid, I was obsessed with dinosaurs.
I
loved
them.
Man. I had the action figures. I had so many books and just loved it. And I'm not one of these people that, I don't believe every conspiracy that JP throws at me. I'm definitely not one of these people who just because I've loved or come to know something a certain way refuse to delve into something that might disprove. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if it comes to light, the dinosaurs were never real. That sucks because young me would be heartbroken to find that out. But grown up me, doesn't mind, seeing if it's, So I would love to do a full-on podcast about that.
I'm telling you, man, just what fascinates me the most is just the idea of the big lie, social conditioning on such a massive scale. That's why
misinformation's not hard to spread. With social media today, it's easier than ever, too. I can't tell you how many people I see sharing absolute bull. I've seen people, seriously, man, and this guy's pretty smart. So, I mean, a lot of dumb people will share misinformation, but even smart people are getting tricked. This is this guy I went to school with, and he very smart guy, very intelligent, very witty, just an all-around sharp guy. He shared an article from The Onion and went on this long-ass rant. And I'm like, you realize The Onion is a parody site.
Yeah.
Like, all the stories they write are fake. And then, you could say, well, maybe he was writing his big thing, but then he started arguing with me. No. The Onion is a credible source. I'm like, dude, the Onion is just like Kentucky Fried Movie and all of these other just spoof thing. It's just a spoof. It's making fun of mainstream news. Go to YouTube and look up The Onion. I mean, you really think that there were a couple who had a gymnast daughter that broke her leg and they had to put her down?
Yeah, dude.
You ever seen that, by the way?
No, but I had a friend who thought that Stephen Colbert was a real conservative pundit.
Dude,
when he first came on the air. Yeah, I was just like, man, I'm just gonna leave now.
I had someone trying to say, because before I ever watched Stephen Colbert, the first time I watched it, I thought it was, but then once I started watching the Colbert Report along with the Daily Show, I was like, oh. This dude's just making fun of he's basically Bill O'Reilly, basically making fun of Bill O'Reilly. He's like a far right, guy. And I remember having somebody said the same thing. Well, I can't stand that Jon Stewart. And I'm like, well, I don't always, on either side. I don't always agree with them, but I always liked Jon Stewart. I thought he was he's just intelligent as hell. And
what he's doing right now for the 9/11.
Right. Yeah. And I like the fact that Jon Stewart was mostly, you could tell he was pretty left, but he did not have any reservation for calling out the left if they needed to be called out. Whereas, like with Trevor Noah now, whether you love him or hate him, I mean, his whole platform is, I hate Trump, to the point where I'm like, dude, I'm not his biggest fan either, but I talk about something else. But, but I remember somebody going, well, thank God for that Stephen Colbert because the Comedy Central ain't nothing but liberal propaganda with that Jon Stewart. And I'm like, well, number one, I don't really believe that. But number two, that Stephen Colbert is actually a very, left-leaning person. He's portraying a character that is very extreme far right. No. That's all look at his interview with Richard Dawkins, like talking about, Richard Dawkins, the guy that's real big on, like God's not real and I'm going to shove it in your face, If you can't tell it that Stephen Colbert was being very eccentric at that point, some of the points he was making were very out there, then it went over your head,
Yeah, that's too often the case with people.
But yeah, you're right. It's easy. And in today's world, it's easier than it's ever been, I believe, to spread misinformation, just in the sense of social media. Man, like I said, dude shared an Onion article. Something. I had one girl, no kidding, a girl that now I don't know her to be the smartest person I've ever met, but it was an article from Chick-fil-A, and I think it was the Onion. It was saying Chick-fil-A is now saying, they don't believe in brown people or something like that. Mm-hmm. And she shared it and was like, this is bullshit. I'll never eat there again. And I commented and we're like, check the source. That number one, what business would be stupid enough to say that and expect to continue doing business? And I showed her. I took it to, went to, which I know Snopes has been cited for making wrong calls too. But I mean, I put a Snopes or all of that. I was like, this is not a real article. Now, regardless of how you feel on Chick-fil-A's stance on homosexuality, they've never said they don't want brown people to eat at their restaurant. Like, they're not stupid. Like, number one, I don't believe they believe that. Number two, even if they did, do you think they would come out and say that and expect to continue being a profitable business here in America?
And it's not just outlets like that, man. I mean, mainstream media outlets. I remember during the 2016 election, Donald Trump was saying that, after 9/11, he saw Muslims in the streets celebrating. And everybody, just panned him, just like, how could you say that? That's a blatant lie. There's no way that's true. I mean, CNN, all these mainstream news sources, you can go on YouTube, check out, Howard Stern was on the air as 9/11 was happening. A cab driver called in and said, there's, these people in these communities in New Jersey, New York, or wherever, and they're out here in the streets celebrating. I mean, I know it's Howard Stern and it's, not the most credible thing, but I mean, this was just a New York City taxi driver calling in as this was happening, just point blank reporting what he was seeing.
Like, I'm sure Howard Stern, as wacky as his show was, when 9/11 was happening, no one was laughing. Like, this was not a comedic show.
Yeah, this wasn't a bit. I mean, I really want to download it because before you know it, that'll be yanked off YouTube just because, I mean, the whole narrative of 9/11, give it another generation. Who knows if it'll even resemble what actually took place. I mean, that's all it takes. It's just enough time to, for enough people one generation to die, you tweak the facts, you pull the right clips off.
That's a very, very valid point. Very valid point.
So like I said, that's really what I want to get into with the woke podcast.
That's what drives you the most with the conspiracy stuff, is more like just the fascination with like a widespread lie and the control of misinformation to steer people a certain way.
That's why, like, I'm not a scientist. I can't get into the scientific aspect, but just like flat Earth, as cockamamie as it sounds, I believe that it's possible for them to pull off a falsity on that grand of a scale.
We've had common ground on that. See, I have told you, I do not, and sorry for the few people that do believe that the Earth is flat. I'm not disparaging your beliefs. I don't believe that. However, you and I have found common ground because I have said, no, I totally agree with you in the fact that the government, or, like you said, I hate to say the government because it's like that makes it just sound like one powerful being, but whatever powers to be could totally perpetuate this giant lie and have us believing something that's completely opposite of what it is. I just don't believe in that case. I agree with you on that, and I find that fascinating. And I do think that we are steered in directions and lied to and made to believe this is the way it is when really it's not even close. Just with flat Earth, I just don't believe it with flat Earth. But we can find common ground there because I totally believe in the powers to be lying to us and manipulating us and having some sinister agenda.
Well, one common thread you find, man, when they started really pushing, the Isaac Newton stuff, the heliocentric model of the solar system, and then space fraud, you get into the 1800s with these classic science fiction writers. They planted the seeds back then that we could travel and leave the Earth in rocket ships, and give it about 100 years, 1960s, we have shows and movies showing it, Star Trek, what have you. And then by, late 60s, people totally believe that we can make it off the planet and get to the moon.
Well, but that's how it all starts, is with an idea. I mean, people knew back in the Roman days, or the days of the great philosophers, that we were just on a planet, that there was space out there. Like, what we were on was not the whole world, that there was a whole system of planets and stars that we just couldn't get to then, and the technology wasn't available then, and then we started dreaming, and then, like you said, science fiction writers took that idea, made cool stories, but then the advancement of technology in the last 100 years, or however stretch, I'm terrible with time estimates, but made it possible to actually go and do it. I mean, every great stride that humanity makes starts with a dream or an idea or even a crazy story.
But one common thread, the majority of people pushing this ideology were Freemasons. It's like the Freemasons just...
I have a book on them. I had a book, because actually my cousin and my uncle are both Freemasons, and one of my best friends growing up, his dad was a Freemason.
My grandfather was on my dad's side.
So especially here in little small southern towns, I mean, a lot of people around here are Masons, and I don't know if they necessarily even tie into the big picture of like what the Masons really are, because I've always said, if it's kind of like the mafia, if I were the Freemasons,
guys,
not even so, I would have organizations out there completely clueless to what we were doing, like out there spreading the good news. So when people go, they say the Freemasons like control the world, and it's like, George down the street in the fire department, are you kidding? He's a great guy. The Masons just help each other out, and yada yada yada. I would set up sects and not even tell them exactly, not tell them anything. I'd be like, all right, here's what we do, yada yada. But in the center, you're doing your bad stuff. But I've got a book about some fascinating stuff when it comes to conspiracy theories and the Freemasons. Like some of the most powerful presidents ever have been in the Freemasons.
Oh yeah.
The majority, at least, I've read some stuff on the Freemasons. It's been a while, but that's some odd stuff going on there. Some of their like hand gestures are pretty graphic. Like there's one something like, if you don't keep a secret, something about running your hand across your stomach, like you vow to be disemboweled if you spill secrets, something like that. It's been so long, but sorry to interrupt you. I'm like, hey, Freemasons, I've read about those. I have a book somewhere about the Freemasons.
No, man,
do you think that do you think that they're up to something, or?
I think they have a lot to do with a lot of stuff that's been going on behind the scenes for a very, very long time.
I think this book was saying that the Knights Templar became the Freemasons.
I've heard that too, yeah.
Which if you play Assassin's Creed, the Templars are the bad guys. But weren't the Knights Templar like originally created to protect the Holy Grail and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's the common perception, and that they unearthed some artifacts under, what was it, King Solomon's Temple, or I don't even remember now. It's been so long.
They gained like power from these artifacts, because in Assassin's Creed, like they were like the apple of Eden. It wasn't actually. Which, that's one thing. Now, I haven't played the last few Assassin's Creed. I think I played up through like Black Flag, maybe the one that came out after that for those that play video games. But I haven't played in the last few. But that's what I used to love about it, was the story. Like they were saying, and they had a little disclaimer that came up before the game. The game was created by people of all different types of beliefs, religions, and so that this was just a story. It wasn't a... But like it was really fascinating, because like the apple of Eden was not actually an apple. It was a piece of technology that they were, mankind was forbidden to mess with, because like it basically biting the apple is a metaphor. Like they like this thing gave you uncontrolled, just crazy power and yada yada yada. And basically it was like an ancient, like I think alien race. It's been so long since I've played it, that created humanity, and humanity started kind of doing their own thing and yada yada yada. But like in the Templar were trying to seize control of these artifacts because of the power that they could wield with it. And as in the Assassin's Guild, you were stopping them because no man should possess that type of power. But I don't know. It's fascinating when you think about like all the I don't know if euphemisms would be what you would call it, but like Adam and Eve and the apple and God. I mean, was that two early humans that were like in a lab and they broke out? And you know what I mean? Like I love thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally think it's more plausible that the burning bush Moses saw. You see early depictions and how it's described. I forget the name of the plant, but it's a native plant that produces dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and I think he just ate something off that plant or something.
Started tripping balls.
Tripping his ass off, and who knows what he was talking. I mean, a lot of people who do DMT talk about having encounters with otherworldly beings. It's a very common thing in the DMT trip. Now, whether it's, just your subconscious communicating to you, or if you're actually going somewhere beyond this realm and communicating with interdimensional beings, who knows? I haven't done it yet.
I love the yet part on that. I haven't done it yet.
Do it sooner or later. It's just a matter of the right time and place.
Didn't you say there's places you can go in the world and do it legally?
Yeah, man. Peru. A lot of people like going down to Peru and doing the ayahuasca sessions. It's a very controlled atmosphere. Yeah,
and they they're very they watch you. They if something goes wrong, whatever, right? It's very safe atmosphere that you're doing that in, not just your buddy's garage.
Right, which I'm not so sure I wouldn't like to do it like a lot of people have done, just like synthetic DMT produced in a lab where it's not,
Would you want to do that, though? I mean, look at synthetic marijuana. It's just killing people.
Well, it's not synthetic in the fact that it's artificial. It's just it's extracted in a very scientific manner. It's not just some Mexican dude squeezing a frog and getting juice in a glass and mixing it with something. And I only say Mexican dude because of an episode of Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia or whatever that Vice show is. I'm not saying that Mexicans enjoy squeezing frogs. It was just based on a show I saw. But so yeah, there's much more controlled and pure ways to derive the DMT.
Right.
It's still the same substance. Like I said, it's just not out there in the wild, So
very interesting.
But yeah, man, I don't know, man.
I love where these conversations go. We start off talking about rogue AI and mind control to talking about, explanations for things in the Bibles. That's why I love Random Wednesday so much. Like you said, I almost want to keep Random Wednesday, even though we do pretty much do conspiracies and stuff, and then have a separate conspiracy podcast where we'll base it on one subject for each podcast, because I love the free range of this. I love how we start way over here and then end up way over there, And
I definitely want to make these more focused, pick these topics and really dive in deep and have the research and hopefully have some people to bounce off of as well with different topics. And then we can just, use Wednesdays like we did originally, just talking about, my sexual proclivities and things.
I do miss those.
Yeah, we hadn't got into that much lately.
But got to get your buddy Matt Crowder in here, man. I want to get him for the Supernatural podcast.
Yeah,
we have 2 episodes. Once I reach 3, I'll start releasing them on Fridays. And I want to have a 5 to 7. I got to message someone. There's someone apparently whose house has been here near us, whose house has been on Ghost Hunters or whatever. It would be a phone interview most likely. I will message her today. I've been so busy and I'm not getting any sleep. So I keep thinking I need to do this, and then I forget. But I will make that happen. Yeah. And get her on. Maybe we can get her as our third, and then.
Yeah, man, we can probably get Matt in here tomorrow for the Supernatural thing, just in the afternoon. I know he's off. He doesn't have any gigs tomorrow.
I'd be down.
He's a night owl, so getting him in here in the morning with us is,
yeah, I'd be down.
Struggle, but. No, man, excited. So many cool stuff coming around the corner, and so many ways you, as the listener, can get involved.
Speaking of which, let's talk about that Patreon.
Yes, patreon.com/thepodcastingdead. We'll have the link in the description for the vidya. All the money goes into the podcast, not into new sneakers or drugs for me. It goes into equipment and merchandise that, in turn, will enhance your experience with us. And so
that's the first 3 things we want: cameras to make it a video podcast, a good editing laptop, and merchandise to give back to you, the listener.
That's exactly right. So just $1 a holler, or as much as you want to give. We're certainly not saying you can't give as much as you want.
And if you can't give us anything, we still just appreciate you hitting. You can still help us, even if you can't donate to the Patreon. You can still help us out a ton by liking this video or any of our videos, sharing them, getting people to the channel. That lots of little things help us, and we appreciate it. Or just you tuning in helps us as far as views. So
keep in mind, the only reason we even created the Patreon is because we had people asking us to create a Patreon.
Really. We had listeners saying, I want to contribute and help make this podcast better. How can I go about doing that? And after 5 or 6 people had asked in a year's time, we were like, we'll create a Patreon then.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of great listeners who are helping us out.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, we're getting there. Before long, these will be video podcasts, and we put out, 3 or 4 a week? So, I mean, you know, we get to where we're doing pretty good. We can put out more. Who knows what the future holds? So.
And if you would like to contribute just specifically to my vices and my pleasures, I'm selling dick pics for $1.99. You know, very tasteful, very artsy.
He doesn't offer refunds if you're not satisfied either. I learned that the hard way.
No, absolutely not. So, you know, reach out to me on those and we can see what we can do.
It's like a malnourished eel. I still don't know why you won't give me my $1.99 back.
Look, you know, I told you if you did something to get me a little bit more excited, it would have been a better photo. But, you know, you insisted on taking it yourself, so what do you want me to say?
All right, so make sure you follow us on social media. JP, where can they find you?
J_Radsaw on the Instagram that I really never use. Periscope, that's where the magic happens. Periscope, Jpslim, just JPSLIM, Jpslim on Periscope. And Snapchat, JP5000, JAYPEA 5000.
Boom, there it is. You can find me very easily on Periscope, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just search I'm Justin Lloyd. All lowercase, no apostrophes, no spaces. I'm Justin Lloyd. Instagram, Periscope, and Snapchat. Also, if you're on Facebook, go find the Podcasting Dead's page and give it a like. We'll see you tomorrow for Mail Call Thursday. I'm Justin.
And I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead.